2024. This is day September 15, hour 1:30, morning hour, I'm going to arrive. We'll get started here and we'll go into this meeting, but we do make time available for any public comment, for anyone who's in attendance or calling in. Do we have anybody?
There's nobody on.
Nobody else.
Outside.
Okay. Safe bet. All right, so we'll move on to agenda item number 3, which is the minutes of the August 25 meeting. We have it in hand. Anybody want to suggest something?
I will move to approve the minutes of August 25, 2021.
Second. Okay, so moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Unanimous. So we'll move on to item 4, which is our topic of discussion today, which is our annual allocation recommendation on the Farmland Preservation Program. So Stephanie and Kirk both here. Who's
Okay, I'll give it a crack. So hopefully you all have the memo that we wrote up, but similar to what we prepared in past years. As I'm sure you all recall, back in 2019, you authorized a goal for the Farmland Preservation Program, 30,000 acres by 2030, and then directed staff each year to prepare a budget that would keep us in line with that goal. Getting to roughly 900 acres a year on average over the years. So just at the September meeting of the Ag Land Preservation Board, we took a look at where we are now and what we need to do to get to the goal in 2030. As of now, we've preserved just over 23,000 acres of farmland to go. So we have almost, just short of 7,000 acres to go forward through to 2030. Again, we're keeping on track basically at that roughly 900 acres a year. Then when looking at what finances we would need to get to that 900 acres a year, staff is recommending that essentially we stay at the status quo general fund allocation of 850,000. We're anticipating many of the variables for the program to remain the same for next year. Anticipating similar state funding, similar average easement costs, similar clean and green rollback donations, and all those elements that make up the budget. So essentially before you today, recommending status quo over last year of the 850,000, and happy to answer any questions that you might have. And just might add into, and Vince was there last evening, we did do a pre-application meeting for farmers. We sent out a letter to folks that may fall in the category of being appropriate candidates. We had 20 people come to the building last evening, farmers, to learn more about the program, and there was a lot of folks that were very interested. So I'm anticipating that we'll be getting more applications in the door in the next couple months between now and the end of December. Our goal is always to sort of keep recruiting so that we're constantly being able to preserve the best farms out there, not just sort of like what's left on our list.
I saw, I was on Williams Grove Road, I saw the Strock Farm has a preserve farm sign on it now.
They just settled this year, beginning of the summer, I think, so.
Yeah, it was nice to see. Yeah, it's really nice, it looks good. Good.
So the 850 is that, I'm presuming that's the amount that's budgeted for this year. We don't have any from senior here to confirm for us, but this was the schedule that was put in place, right? So
I would assume so.
yeah. Okay, so that would make sense. It would be already, this will be done in the budget. And you say that this is the same amount as last year?
Same amount as last year, yes.
The only other question I have is the one I always have, have we made any effort, any meaningful effort to recruit some of these other townships who have vested interest in this?
I would say we have made meaningful effort, but we have not made meaningful progress on that front. Since we met last year, we did send a letter out to all of the municipalities. We talked about it at an outreach meeting. We talked about it at an MAB meeting. There's been some one-on-one conversations when we had good opportunity to make contact with municipalities and talk to, what might be the benefits for them for participating. But unfortunately, we have yet to have any takers on of our municipal partners that do want to participate.
Would you consider any of them to be prospects, or are they simply say, county's going to do it, why should we get involved?
I would say there's no significant prospects. I'm not sure their response is that it's the county's job. I think they just feel financially strapped at this point in time and haven't had the pressure from either their residents or other stakeholders in the community really pushing them in that direction.
Well, that's where it has to come from, because it doesn't put any financial pressure on the township because it's a separate tax. Kurt, back when South Middleton tried this many years ago, is that group of people still together? Are they?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, those groups are what make the difference.
Yeah, it's not so much the
official.
And the MS4 fees are huge. They are certainly a burden on the local taxpayer. Those MS4s, MS4 fees, which I know we're still subject to, question, right? Why do I have to pay these? So I think that's an influence there that has interfered maybe with the ability to get municipalities to come on board and say, hey, we'll participate, we'll get our taxpayers to participate.
Actually, relative to that, I think, was it Hampton that you had a conversation with that, is there a way that preserving farmland in another municipality through a contribution from Hampton Township might benefit your MS4 program? I think they decided that was an interesting concept, but there's still challenges within DEP by doing offsets in a municipality outside of yours. So that there's potential down the road if we could get DEP on board to allow some of those types of arrangements.
The DEP wants us to do countywide stormwater management planning. There's always pressure to do things at a watershed level. And then when you come back with reasonable solutions to manage this issue, especially the MS4 and HSBP issues at a county level, where you look at our county, which is well suited to this, the western part of the county is largely rural, the eastern part of the county is largely urbanized and developed, where you could do some sort of offsetting program. It would make a lot of sense. There's been no traction. Right now they have a program where if you have a farm that's within a mile of the MS4 boundary, which is essentially the urbanized boundary of the county. So roughly for us, it's kind of the Carlisle area, Carlisle, Dickinson, West Penn type border there. A mile into that, you could do an offsetting. So that limits our ability to do it. And also limits our ability for growth. If you look at areas like that, there may be sewer and water infrastructure in place. A mile past that may be future development areas, not future preservation areas. So just the whole policy doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think we're firm believers that if we could do something at the countywide level, it would improve water quality. It would definitely decrease the burden on our residents to do something at the countywide level, because we're doing something more meaningful in the western part of the county versus some smaller scale projects that have an impact, but just not, you're not getting the return on investments that you would if you're working in agriculture areas.
That sounds important enough that it would warrant some legislative intervention if we could get it. Would that have a prospect of?
Yeah, we really beat the drum on this one a lot, Gary. Even back to the days of our President Brown, he was one of the guys way back in the day that brought this up back in, it was like 2003, 2004. We used our farmland preservation program as an offset, and studies and other things has just never come to fruition. It's just, we constantly get these legislative barriers. Not even legislative, more regulatory. How you take legislation to regulation.
But if they're effective, they should be able to at least break through on some of those fronts. Granted, it's a tall task. So.
Even on the water quality front, for some of our farms, then you have to establish a baseline of where they're at, and it's just a lot of work in doing that to show that a farm's a certain baseline. But we know if we put certain BMPs on our farms, we're going to have impact. We can show that. Counting, a farm that we do in North Newton Township to do BMPs there and have them counted in Hampton Township.
On a positive note, though, this year in 2021, we selected 2 farms in Silver Spring Township, which is, of course, have been very active in participating. And knowing that they have an ample pot of funds, we garnered a deal where we contributed $1,000 an acre per farm, and they contributed the remainder. So not even 50-50, it was more like 1/3, 2/3. So then we're allowed to then take their funds, certify them to the state. Now this would be the following year in 2023 and get additional state fund back to our program. So, that is that scenario will be very much a win-win on the part of Cumberland County and for the township too, because we do all the work in processing the farm where they would have to go to a private consultant to shepherd it through that process. And then we steward it over the long haul. So it's still a good deal, but financially, this was even better than a typical 50-50 farm.
Last year too, the board did 50% bargain sales. So, the messages that we've been communicating to from the Board of Commissioners, trying to make our dollars go as far as they can. I think the board's taking that seriously. And we have some balances left over, opportunities to work with farmers further down the list that have viable farms, but to look at them as a 50% bargain sale, we're only paying for 50% of the cost of these, but we have seen interest in that. We had 3 last year. We have some more planned this year too.
How do you mean by viable farms?
So a lot of times folks say, well, if you're on the shale land, the land's not as productive. What we've seen, and we're actually starting to see some new clusters on the shale land, where those farms are viable and, may not be the best soil, but they're really making a go of it and being productive in agriculture.
I know Hampton, every time I talk to them, they say, well, we've got one farm in Hampton. Is that a preserved farm, or is there just one working farm?
The Big Shore farm.
Yeah.
So it's not an ASA. And I think the Silver Spring had asked if they could include it in their ASA since it's a neighboring township. I don't know how far that got, if it got anywhere.
I don't think it moved anywhere, but I
The
think
Hampton guys would have to approve it.
there would be potentially a viable option, yeah, with the support of Hampton.
Right.
Do we make any delineation between the type of farming and its relative value and viability in the marketplace, or would they all treated equally?
In terms of like crop versus livestock versus produce.
Yeah, because, we're going through major issues with dairy in general. And frankly, it seems like some people probably should transition out of that. But we've got enormous surpluses and such.
Yeah, from that aspect, that's not factored into our ranking what the type of farm is. One thing that the Ag Board did do this year that was new is included a minimum criteria that said preservation of the farm must be consistent with the county comprehensive plan and the municipal comprehensive plan, so that we can try to, weed out, so to speak, any of the farms that might not be properly zoned for agriculture or long-term, might not be viable due to, again, zoning, how, if it's zoned for residential, it's not a tract that we want to have, or it's not an area that the municipality wants to see agriculture continue, that's not an area we're going to prioritize our investments.
Well, that's very different than what I was asking, but but I mean, honestly, the viability of a farm really does depend on what type of farming they're doing, so it's kind of hard to make a long-term determination considering that, but that answers my question, so. Okay, any additional questions?
Yeah, Gene, would you be willing at the next Western Cottage meeting? I think I did it when I was liaison. Just mention to them that we're seeking partners at the municipal level.
Absolutely.
And you can give Silver Spring as an example.
Okay.
But Western counties, they have far more viable farmland that could be preserved this way.
Got it. Yep.
Okay.
Happy to.
I think I did that once before and I didn't get much out of it, but it wouldn't hurt to try it again.
Does not hurt.
Thank you.
Other questions? So we've already approved this. Is this an action item today? Because is there an action associated with this?
The significant action would actually not come until January when we'll get the form from the Department of Ag to certify the farms.
All right. Okay, so no internal step we need to take, right?
No, it's I will remind everybody that the number that appears in the budget represents actual spending, which would be for the year prior and potentially 1 or 2 carryovers from a different year. So the number in the budget won't necessarily match this number.
Okay. Okay.
I think we have been addressing that in one form or another every year anyhow, and it's good for clarity in case anyone's tuning in and wonders.
Yes, absolutely.
So we'll probably discuss that again. So, so this is purely informational, no action. Any additional questions?
Thanks.
You guys have anything additional for us? Okay. All right, we'll move on then to, thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to item 5, which is other business. Anything additional?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay, that's a case, staff, nothing. So as for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
And adjourn.
Yeah, sure.